Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Today's guest is Steve Ferrara, a thought leader in spiritual awakening, nationally recognized speaker, and the author of From Grief to Gratitude, a new paradigm on death. For more than 2 decades, Steve has guided thousands of people through life's most difficult transition, helping them shift from suffering to healing, from loss to renewed meaning. His work was born from a deeply personal turning point, the passing of his 23-year-old son. What followed was a 20-year journey of journaling, reflection, and spiritual transformation, a journey that reshaped not only his life, but the lives of countless others. His book has been praised by Jack Canfield as phenomenal, a memoir of his spiritual awakening and one of the most impactful books on grief. Today, we are talking about resilience, consciousness, universal laws, and how pain can become purpose. Let's welcome Steve to Conversations with Sekani.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am very happy to be here.
All right. It's nice to have you here, actually. So, yeah, what I usually ask, people first is for those meeting you for the first time, who is, Steve beyond the titles?
Uh, beyond the book, Steve is a father of two daughters and a grandfather. And I was in business for many years in finance here in America. I sold my business 5 years ago. Um, I have always enjoyed reading, understanding life in a bigger way since I'm probably 10 or 11 years old. I've been exposed to spirituality through my father. So I've been very fortunate. I learned to meditate at a very young age, and it's really carried me through some of the toughest life challenges that you could ever encounter, including, as you've mentioned, losing my son at 23 in a car accident. And then a few years later, my wife passed away. And, two very, very impactful life challenges, but I was able to find a way, and it actually was more from the inner path of life than anything else, which is what we'll talk a little bit about today.
Wow. All right. So, you you had a career, a successful career long before, writing your book. So what was your worldview like before your spiritual transformation, basically?
It's a good question. I don't know that I remember life before being exposed to spirituality, primarily due to my father, but not that I was practicing it all the time. I understood that there was another part of life. But as we all know, the distractions of this world can really get you to a point where you forget that there's anything other than this human experience that we're having, and we live a life from the outside in. Uh, and I was involved with that to some extent. My worldview was always to try to bring value to people, whether it was in my business or my personal life. That's just kind of the way I've been designed. But I learned along the way, and certainly through these major life experiences, that there is so much more to life. And my worldview became one of realizing it's not just this human experience. This human experience, could be 100 years, could be 70 years, could be 23 years, like in my son's case. But it's only a drop in the overall bucket of journey that we're on. Wherever we've come from, wherever we're going, I'm not sure, but I know that this is only a small part of the journey.
Mm, okay. All right. So yeah, we'll move on to like our core conversation, which is grief and transformation, basically. So you describe your journey as moving from grief to gratitude, right? So what does that
Yes.
shift actually mean to you?
The shift from grief to gratitude, um, I think everyone goes through their own grieving process. You can't ever tell someone how to grieve. We all do it our own way. And, grief is real, and grief is something that is something we need to go through, whether it's with the loss of a loved one or just major life challenges or, just the circumstances of life. Many times you grieve what you're leaving, and, and it's, just a part of life. But as we transition, and for me, as I began to realize that, grief is important, but it does have a point that you need to make a further step. You can't stay in grief. That might be a month or two or three or six for some people. It might be a year or two. But at some point, we need to know that there is other steps that we need to take. And grief is really more of a window for us to walk through as opposed to a place that we stay. Grief is something where it opens a window for us to move forward. But sometimes we're not taught that. Certainly in my society, in the Western part of the world, in the USA, our society doesn't know how to deal with death in general. We have a very elementary way of dealing with death, and it's very self centered. It's very rarely anything larger than that. And so that's why many people do get stuck in grief for very long periods of time. Nobody's ever taught us anything different. But I hope my book, and there are many others, that do show that there's a pathway. And this is only the first step. Grief is part of the process. And as we take the next step, you don't go to gratitude immediately. You're going to, go through many steps. The first biggest one probably is accepting that life is unfolding the way it unfolds. It's been doing that forever. If we've been here for 14 billion years, scientists tell us we've been here for that long. Life has just been unfolding for all of those years. It's never asked me if I agree with it. It's never asked me my opinion. It just unfolds. And now all of a sudden, here I am. Why would life ask me my opinion? It's just unfolding. So the only thing that we can do is come to a place of accepting that that's what life is doing. And it's been doing it forever. And it's been doing it probably perfectly. It's just that I may not agree with how it's unfolding in my life. It doesn't really matter what I agree or disagree with, but I need to accept it. And that was the first big step that helped me begin to move toward a more grateful attitude. And I began to look at death as something that might be able to teach me. It wasn't here to torture me. In general, life is not here to torture us, it's here to teach us. And that's what I began to realize. And I began to take steps from there, knowing that there were life lessons in all of this experience.
Okay, wow. All right. So, I know that people grieve differently, actually. And yeah, also the first step, like you said, is acceptance, right? But I believe there are more steps to, moving from grief to gratitude. So do you want to like take us through those steps? Because people grieve differently, but I feel that with what you know so far, you could tell us how to move from grief to gratitude, basically.
Yes, grief to gratitude. My experience, my journey was where I literally hit rock bottom, I would call it. I hit a place where I was in physical, emotional, and mental pain to the extent that I was just literally bent over in pain, like as if somebody just punched me in the belly. I mean, that's how bad the grief was. And I remember one day, it actually was when my father was over my house, and it just hurt so bad. And I said, Dad, it just hurts so bad. And in that moment, when I hit what I feel was rock bottom, a very dim little light came on in my head that there's got to be a better way of handling this than the way I'm handling it. And I think that is a turning point for everyone in their own way. you realize there's got to be a better way. It cannot be this way. I cannot live my life this way anymore. And and so what occurred is I began to understand what I was saying before, that acceptance is so important in the process of realizing that life is happening the way it happens. You know, the world just keeps doing what it does, it just keeps whirling on. And I realized that I had the ability to choose how I was going to respond to that. Um, it didn't take away the sadness. There were days that I was so sad that I would feel that you know I just felt such a heavy feeling of loneliness and sadness. But it dawned on me that it's just a passing feeling. It's not me. I don't have to identify with the sadness. I don't have to identify with these emotions. I'm something greater than that. And one of the important revelations I had is that if I just feel these feelings and move through them and allow them to be, I didn't let them go up into my headspace where they'd get mixed up with thinking and thought. And that's when sadness or any emotion, anger, jealousy, whatever it may be, becomes drama once it mixes with our thought, and it becomes stories like poor me, and I could have had grandchildren, my son could have been in business with me, or this or that. And your mind thought begins to spin stories that have no basis in them, but we begin to see that, and that becomes our reality. We're living in those stories have no basis to them. If we just allow those feelings of sadness to remain in our gut, which is where I usually felt them, and not go up into my head and turn into stories, I was able to live with it. I was able to say, okay, sadness is not going to kill me. It's not going to make me jump out the window. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel anger. It's okay to feel whatever you feel, love. I mean, it's all feelings. Just feel them. The tough ones, just feel them. Don't try to bury them. Don't try to suppress them. Just feel them. Allow them to be. And as I began to know that that was the way I could handle some of these emotions, and that I was not identified with these emotions, um, my journaling, which I haven't talked about yet, but journaling was the most important thing, and I talk a lot about that in my book. I started journaling the first morning after my son's death, and I did it daily for years and years and years. And that's where the book emerged from. I really had no intention of writing a book. It's just after I sold my business a few years ago, I started reading back through the journals, and I started to realize what a journey I had been on. And I started writing about that, and it eventually became this book, which I hope is here to help others. But my journaling, as I was going through this process of acceptance and knowing that these feelings are not me, and that I have choice as to how I want to respond to these things in my life, uh, I began to see myself journaling about this experience is not about me. It's about my son's journey. I can begin to look at this from my son's side. I mean, I love my son. I supported my son for all the years he was here. Why would I not support his ongoing journey? I don't know where you go, but I know there's got to be something more, like I said, than this human experience. So I loved him enough that I just supported him. If that was what his destiny was to only live 23 years, I accept that. The universe doesn't make mistakes, and I'm going to support him in his journey. And when I shifted the focus from me, which was very self-centered, it was self-centered. It was very much about feeling sorry for myself and everything else. And I expanded the focus to him. Now my journaling started to make me realize that I can actually have an ongoing and a growing relationship with my son. It would be different. I can't talk to him like you and I are speaking. I can't have a cup of coffee with him. I can't hug him. But communication goes on at all different levels. And, I realized that this is going to be a different type of language, so to speak. But the language for me became journaling. And I would just let streams of consciousness come through and express how I felt. Uh, Most of the time, it was a monologue. It wasn't necessarily a dialogue where he was speaking back to me, but I had feelings as I was writing it, and I could feel his presence. So I realized I could have this ongoing and growing relationship with Christopher. And the more I focused on his side of the journey, the more I began to even realize that, uh, I can actually uh, continue to love him no different than I've always loved him. Love is something that we have within us that we share with someone, whether they're here in their human form or whether they're gone. Love is still something within us that we share. Love is not about getting anything. And that's a big misconception in many societies, is that we're looking for somebody to love us. And it's not really the case. You're looking for someone that you can share your love with. And by you sharing this love that's within, that's how you feel it. We don't really know how somebody else feels about us. We know how we feel about them, and that's what we feel as we share our love. So there was no difference whether my son was here physically or not. As I shared my love with him, I still felt that same level of love as I always did. And then I began to realize that as I continued on this path, that my son and I could continue to be spiritual partners, helping each other. I support him, he supports me. We're walking this journey together in some way, shape, or form. I think we're all walking on a certain journey. And there are people that are with us both here and not here. Can't prove it, but and so I began to see my son as a spiritual partner, and I began to just understand that my son and I could truly move forward, learning about life together, and I just had an ongoing, relationship, and still have, with him. Um, I some of the other things, just to finish this part up about getting to gratitude. I also always have looked at life as a classroom, and we're all students for however long we're here. There almost could be no other reason for us to be here. I mean, we do all the things we do in our life, and that's great, but the ultimate purpose has got to be for us to continue to learn and grow. And as I can, kept that attitude of being a student in a classroom, and every experience we're given, embedded into those experiences are opportunities to learn. So the tougher the experience, and not that I want a lot of tough experiences, but they just come your way as life unfolds. The tougher the experience, the more potential learning there was, and the ability for me to accelerate my learning if I would look at life that it's a teacher. I'm a student. I look at things with curiosity. I question, I listen, I put myself in silence in order to hear whatever might be being told to me. And it comes in feelings. And so you change your whole attitude to knowing that anything and everything that occurs in life is here to teach me. Life loves us. Life is not here to torture us. Life is here to teach us. And as long as I could stay on that, I moved away from approaching life fearfully, or whatever, angrily, or approaching life in any other way but what's this here to teach me? Even if it was an interaction with somebody that, we just didn't get along, or whatever, a conversation, a disagreement, or love. These are all experiences for me to continue to learn and grow. And so all of that is what, filled much of the pathway, for me to move toward, um, toward gratitude. And once I was able to realize that gratitude is is this place where I could feel that I'm being healed. Then I realized I have such gratitude, firstly, for the 23 years that Christopher and I were together in his human form. Rather than regret that I didn't have him after 23 years, I had him for 23 years. How lucky am I? Some people never have a son, some people never have children. I had a son for 23 years. I'm so fortunate. And I also began to feel gratitude for the lessons of life that this experience was teaching me. And that's what enabled me to continue to keep moving forward. And I'm still every day moving forward. It's an ongoing process.
Wow. Hmm. I feel like I've learned a whole lot already. And yeah, you've covered all the questions I could have asked you, actually. But I want to, let's talk about for my younger audience, because my podcast is for, people in their 20s, right? So,
Yes.
many young adults, they feel lost or disconnected from purpose. So what advice would you actually, give to them, basically?
Yes, and I get a chance to talk to a lot of young people, and I love young people. I love your generation. Whether you know it or not, you're the ones that are going to be the fixers of many of the things that my generation um,
Mhm.
broke, maybe. I mean, we had an opportunity. I'm in the baby boom generation in America. So, we had an opportunity growing up in the 60s. We were hippies, we were dreamers. We wanted to make this a different world. But, through sequence of events, I guess the world wasn't ready yet. We weren't ready. And many of us just fell into the world of, all right, well, I guess making money is the most important thing, or, whatever. We forgot our ideals of the 60s. You, the young generation today, represent that again. I think we've come full circle. And it's when you are change agents, which your generation is, you're naturally going to be conflicted at times because the world is saying one thing and you're feeling another thing. The thing I would strongly suggest to the young generation is while social media is wonderful and it connects people so wonderfully, it needs to be managed. What we allow to go into our minds is so um, it's just so I don't even know what the word is. It's our mind needs to be protected. We can't allow negativity to just come in because our mind then.
Mm. Okay, sorry. I think you're muted. Your microphone. I think you hit the mute button or something. Mm, I
Here we go.
can.
Can you hear me
Yeah,
now?
I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay. Where did I leave off?
Okay, so you're talking about, social media and we allowing things to get into our minds, right? Without censoring those things.
Yes. So the mind is such a precious thing, and we need to know that we need to protect it. And we just can't let anything and everything in. We need to have some filters. And we need to know that you know we can't even expose ourselves to certain levels of negativity because whether we realize it or not, it's having an effect on us. And then we walk around and wonder why we feel the weight of the world, or you feel depressed for no apparent reason. I mean, many times our individual lives are not so bad, but we think the worst because we've been bombarded with so many things going on in the world that we think are terrible. Now, there are certain things that are, and if there's things that can be done, that's wonderful, and you do them. But if there's not anything that we can necessarily do about them, then complaining about them, worrying about them doesn't add to the solution. It only adds to the problem. And your generation needs to be solution oriented. You're the ones with the answers, and I tell you that absolutely. The young generation has all the answers. You have them, and you'll continue to move this world in the right direction, but it won't come without some work on your parts to uh, keep yourself I guess it would be as clean as possible in terms of what you allow in to your minds. There are so many young people that are doing wonderful things. That's growing, that's emerging. Someone like yourself getting such goodness out there. Who knows if it affects somebody on the other side of the world, maybe. You don't know. We don't know. But you do your best every day to bring value. That's tremendous. That's wonderful, the work that you're doing. And it gets out there and it resonates with some people and it may change them. Other people it may not resonate with. Life changes in generations. It doesn't change in days or weeks or months or even years. It can change for us individually immediately if we choose to look at life in a way that we realize it's a teacher. It's something that is here to help us continue to learn. We keep an open attitude to realizing that life is here and loves us. It would never do anything to us to hurt us, even though it may seem that way at times. And when you continue to get that message out there, it will and does make a big difference. So, young people have an enormous uh, opportunity, and I'd even say responsibility to some extent, to keep moving forward and help themselves and this world continue to move on a path toward openness, acceptance, and ultimately awakening of the human race, that we are here together on this little planet. Science tells us we're on this little tiny planet, in the middle of billions, if not trillions, of other planets and suns and universe and solar systems and everything else, galaxies. So, we're traveling together, the 8 billion of us. And I don't mean to feel or say idealistically, well, everybody should just love each other. It doesn't happen so easily. Over time, it will, but it does happen on an individual basis with how you interact with your friends, with your family, with people in your world. And then if you're so inclined, like what you're doing, getting information out that who knows where it goes, but it's all love based. And that's what's most important.
Wow. Thank you so much. Actually, this has been really, really insightful. And I have a whole lot of questions, but time isn't on my side, right? So I am hoping that maybe some other time we could do this where I could get to ask you the other questions I do have. But before I conclude, right, I'd like to ask you, what would you define success as?
I'm sorry, what would I define
Success.
success?
Yes.
Success, I would again tell you, it's an inside job. It's not an outside job. You don't measure it in money. You don't measure it in things. You don't measure it in materialism. You measure it in terms of the satisfaction and the fulfillment and the love that you have in your life. The way that you show other people compassion instead of judgment, the way you see people's other opinions and respect them rather than feel that you've got to defend your opinion. You see the world in a much bigger way. And, some masters said this once, and I'm not 100% sure who it is, but seek first the spiritual things of life, and all else will follow. And that is so extremely important. And I think, going back to your generation, I think that you guys are on the right track with that because you're not totally driven by having more and more and more and working harder and harder and harder. That was my generation and the previous generations that, I mean, we all have to put a certain amount of effort in. It's good to have a good work ethic. But we need to understand that success is not measured from the outside in, it's measured from the inside out. And those qualities are what I've said: the compassion for people, the love and the value that you bring to people in your everyday relationships, the way that you are a model on your day-to-day life of how you live your life, where people that you don't even realize are affected because they see the way you operate in your life. So that's what I would define success as. Uh, and all the other things on the outside, they you'll have them. I don't know how that all works, but I can tell you, I know that it works. When you seek first spiritual love and understanding, you will have whatever you need in your life. The universe takes care of us. You can't sit in the corner and do nothing. You've got to be appropriate. You've got to have a job or whatever the case may be. But life will give you opportunities. You'll become more aware of them, and you'll have all that you want in the outside world, because the inside world is becoming more straight. And that's where you're coming from, is the inside out.
Well, thank you so much for this, Stephen. And yeah, where can listeners get to know more about you and what you do?
They can go to my website, which is Stephen, Steven, Ferrara, F as in Frank, ERRARA.com. And from there, they'll see information about me. They can go to Amazon and purchase the book if they're interested, Grief to Gratitude. There's information about the book. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well, that you can get from the website. So the website would be what would get people, to know more about me if they're interested. Thank you.
So yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for tuning into Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, make sure to share to someone who you think might need this. And also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episode. Thank you, Stephen, and do have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you. You
Bye.
too.